Welcome back to the Built with Intent podcast. Today we're on location with Alan Knott-Graig, the founder of Fibertime. Alan's mission is both audacious and massive. He's working to close the digital divide by bringing fast, ultra-affordable fiber to townships where millions have been left behind using their pay-as-you-go model. We'll examine the strategy behind his unique model, the hard-won lessons from his most public failures, and his vision for a future JSE listing. Let's find out how success is built with intent. Alan, it's so great to have you on the podcast today. And before we dive into the incredible journey here at Fibertime, I want to start with you. As I sit across from you today, what I'd love to learn before we know anything about the business is who you are behind the title of CEO, founder, and author.
Thanks. Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm obviously a son, as most boys are. I've got a couple of brothers as well. Okay. And obviously I'm an entrepreneur as well. I've had my own business now for about 23 years. Various iterations of business, but I've been working for myself for about 23 years. But maybe just to do a qualification, I'm a white guy. I was born in South Africa in 1977. That's the middle of apartheid. My dad's a very well-known businessman. He started Vodacom. I've got a very unusual name, Alan Knott-Graig. So I've had an enormous number of tailwinds in my life that a lot of people aren't lucky enough to have had. So a lot of the stories that I have are not relevant to most people because they weren't as lucky as I was. But what I'm trying to do with my life is do something with the luck that I was given with my birth.
Amazing. The Fibertime offices are in Stellenbosch. Do you live in the area? Are your kids here in the area at school?
Live in Stellenbosch, work in Stellenbosch. I try to cycle to work, but most of the times I drop my kids at school. Yeah, very simple life down here in studies. When I moved here in 2010, I did think it was a bit of a step back. I moved down because we just had children and my wife's from Stellenbosch, and when you have kids, you want to live near your in-laws. But I thought it was a bit of a step back going into this little sleepy little dorpy. But when I got here, I was blown away. It's a great town to be based in for business, particularly if you're in the tech industry. Great people, lots of diversity from an industry specialization perspective. And because it's a walking town, you get to meet people a lot more easily than you do in Joburg. So I've made a lot of contacts and raised a lot of capital because of this town. Wonderful.
Other than parking, walking here is great.
Yeah, I know. Parking's a bit of an issue, becoming more of an issue. But that's why you get a mountain bike and you get on the sidewalk. You know?
Exactly. So you've got a background as a chartered accountant. Yeah. I'm very interested.
Thanks for the reminder.
I'm so interested to hear what the catalyst was that made you move from a traditional finance role into a high-risk telco sector.
Couldn't get a job.
That is not true.
No, I couldn't. I qualified in 2002 with Deloitte. Look, to be honest, I'm not really an auditor. Okay. So the only reason I became a CEO is because my dad gave me zero choices. He said, you're gonna go to varsity. If you go to varsity, I'll pick up the tab. If you don't go to varsity, you're on your own. Okay, I'll go to varsity. I said, okay, you can study anything you want. If you study accounting, I'll pay. If you don't study accounting, you're on your own. Okay, I'll study accounting. You can pass or you can fail. If you fail, you're on your own. If you pass, I'll pay the next year. Okay. So I kind of kept doing that until I got through articles and finished my CA when I was about 25 in 2002. And then I worked in New York for a little bit and traveled a little bit. And when I got back to Joburg, I applied for a job at R&B. It's the only job interview I ever went for. A guy called Raphael Martin, nice guy. And he never phoned me back. And so I honestly couldn't get a job. I didn't try very hard. I don't think I was born to be an employee. And then I was given an opportunity by a wonderful person called Gavin Verigis. I met him in Joburg. We met a few times, and then he eventually said he's got this software for cell phone tracking and he's looking for a jockey. And I had my chance to technically start a business, but it was his business that he gave me equity in and build a business. And since then, I've been lucky. I haven't looked back.
Okay, amazing. I mean, you mentioned just before we started chatting that your pops was involved in Vodacom, and that is putting it lightly. So you obviously grew up in an entrepreneurial home. Is that maybe also where the fondness for not wanting to be an employee came in, or at least the drive?
I wasn't really an entrepreneurial. Look, my dad is a legend, a business legend. Very lucky to have had a father like him. I mean, I learned lots of things through osmosis. He wasn't a man of many words, so you don't phone him up and say, "Will you be my mentor?" and then he talks to you all day. Just ignore you. Wouldn't take the call. But he had to see me. I was the son.
Yeah, he couldn't say no.
Through osmosis, he had to answer my questions. I'd like lurk around his office, so I learned a lot of stuff. But he was a post office employee. He worked for the post office, then he worked at Telkom, then he worked for Vodacom. So he was more a corporate animal than he was.
Okay.
Built an amazing business. And I always wanted to get into telecoms because it changes people's lives. You can make money whilst helping people. But I didn't want to work for my dad. He can be a bit of a tyrant. And I love him, and I've got a lot of respect for him. But it was always going to be tricky working for a guy like him. And MTN wouldn't give me a job. So, in the end, I kind of managed to get into telecoms through the back door. Okay. And I leveraged off my old man's power and position. And I mean, it's like if you're born with big calves, you can run fast. Just do something with what you got. Yeah. And I was born with a famous dad. And I've tried to do my best to build something off the foundation he left behind. And he left a great reputation, and I'm trying to build on top of that reputation.
Amazing. Was there a specific observation to your mind that crystallized sort of the massive market gap that Fibertime's pay-as-you-go model could serve?
Yeah, a long process of fatal errors in business. I mean, I've probably lost more money in more different ways than anybody else in telecoms and stuff. I mean, I'm in some circles, I'm known as a weapon of mass financial destruction. And through iBurst and through World of Avatar and Mixit and Project Isizwe and Heratel, just through a process of elimination, landed on the Fibertime model. And basically there's no shortcuts. There's no easy way to put fiber into townships. You have to put fiber in firstly. You can't do it wirelessly. You have to put fiber into every single home. You have to put a router in every single home. You have to spend the money before you're going to get any money back because there's no contract, there's no debit orders. No one's going to pay you an upfront fee. You have to make it super cheap. So you have to just believe that over time there's going to be enough people wanting the internet to justify the investment. And you have to make it pay as you go because otherwise people have money, but they don't have disposable money. So, and I tried 100 million things before that. Government funding, wireless, debit orders, upfront fees. I've tried everything, and none of it actually worked. So it's after trying all the lazy options that we landed on the hard option. And the hard option is physically installing fiber in every home in every township and then selling £5 vouchers. Yeah. And so that's kind of where we landed. And it's taken 3.5 years, but I think we figured it out. Okay,
amazing. I mean, you had a successful exit from Heratel. Many entrepreneurs would have taken a long break. You obviously dived straight into this Fibertime. Yeah. What was the need that drove you away from reveling in that exit to saying, hey, I want to do something next?
My wife.
Okay, interesting.
She was getting irritated.
She was like, please get out of my house.
That's exactly what happened.
Okay. Was that the words?
Exactly the words. There's going to be problems if you are at the house all the time like you are right now.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. Yeah?
So did you have a running list of things that now that you had to get out of the house for to go and do?
Look, I knew what I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be all over the place. And sometimes, when you're entrepreneurial, you can have a bit of ADD, so you try to do 10 different things. I wanted to do one thing. I didn't want to do the normal bailout in telecoms, which is go try to make money from rich people. So, we started it wasn't called Fibertime then, it was called Paygoza, 1 April 2022, about a month after we sold Heratel. And we just said, okay, this time we're going to focus on townships only, so we're going to live or die in townships. We're going to do fiber only, so we're not going to do the lazy stuff. And I chose my partners very carefully.
Okay.
I made sure that we all shared the same value systems. Great partners. I mean, if it hadn't been for the partners I've got in Fibertime, we wouldn't have a story today. So I think I got the main ingredients right so far, but it's only because I've made all those mistakes in the past and I know what to avoid. And maybe this is not the right path, but I do know what I want to do with my life. I want to spend my life getting people on the internet whilst I'm making money. And if this happens to not be the path, then I'll just start another business and we'll carry on trying to get people on the internet and make money.
Okay, wonderful. What was the very first step to starting Fibertime? Was the decision to tackle that digital divide a calculated move, or was it primarily a calling to make a difference?
No, well, I mean, it's all purpose driven.
Okay.
2010, I watched my daughter. She was on tablet, surfing the internet, pulling away from the rest of us. Thought about the kids down the road in Kaamandi. They don't have books around them. They don't have great schools, and they don't have unlimited internet. It's not fair. And it's also not sustainable. I don't know how I can carry on living in this country and my kids if the divide between the haves and have-nots keeps getting wider. And it's not about what you have; it's about the opportunity you have. So I wanted to do a little thing from the sidelines, in my small little way, and the small lever that that I focus on is internet access, because it gives people opportunity to learn or start a business or find love or entertain themselves. That's been from 2010, and I've had a few iterations of trying to achieve that. Some of them didn't go so well. And there's never a doubt about what I wanted to do with my life from about 2010. The question is, how do you get it going? Everything starts with a story. Things don't start with capital or with staff or with product or with a network. Everything starts with a story. So I had a good story, which was my own journey, which I can tell you 100 ways to lose money, and why we were doing it, and how we're going to do it differently from all other attempts. And if we do lose our money, it's not going to be because we did something that hasn't worked in the past, because we've tried a lot of different things. We're going to try something completely new. And that story got us across the line by attracting the right investors. I obviously put my own money in, but I needed other people to put money in. It's not a cheap business.
Yeah.
And then attracted the right people for that part of the business.
Yeah.
And once you've got your story right, the right kind of people come to the party. But if you don't have the right story, it doesn't matter what you're doing, no one's going to come. Or maybe the wrong people are going to come.
You just mentioned that this organization and anything to do with telcos, if you do it right, you don't take the lazy way out, is a capital intensive business. So when you think about the idea to where you are today, choosing your partners carefully, getting the right funding, did you have to find innovative ways to get some funding strategies across, or was there bold financial decisions that were critical in the success of getting Fibertime from paper to reality?
Look, it's an unproven model anywhere in the world. So we were never going to get bank financing or anything. So we had to raise a lot of capital along the way. Tell the story well enough, then you can keep raising your valuation and people don't take a haircut. We have a lot of little individual shareholders as well as one or two big ones. And I kept widening the net, telling the story to more and more people that bought into this dream, this idea that getting everyone in South Africa on uncapped fiber is a good idea, and we're going to make a lot of money. We're going to be like the Capitec of telecoms, so you buy shares in us, you can potentially make a lot of money. At some point, the capital requirement became big. I mean, right now we spend 7 million rand a day. And so for that kind of money, you can't do rats and mice and family and friends. So we innovated. We created a off-balance sheet financing vehicle called Refiber, and institutions put their money into that. We sell our networks and we rent it back. So that's been quite innovative. We always knew from the beginning, unless we had a plan to raise 20 billion rand, we were wasting our time, because telecoms is a scale game. You can never get to 5 rand a day for 100 megs per second if you're not thinking really big. To give you an idea, to be a decent business, we need at least 250,000 connected homes. That's 1.25 billion rand. So, that's just to get to the minimum. That's your table stakes. So unless you know you have a path to that kind of money, you're just wasting your time doing what we're trying to do. And our dream is every home in the country. In the townships, that's 13 million homes, that's 65 billion rand. So unless we have line of sight of 65 billion rand, otherwise we wouldn't be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and you need serious capital to get there. So going outside to people that would listen to the story and buy into the story and want to make a difference in the lives of ordinary South Africans, I assume there were some personal risks also involved by saying yes, because you mentioned you put in your own money. There's obviously emotional and reputational stakes that's involved. What did it take to have this idea come to life, other than just finding a lot of billions of rands?
No, you got to somehow overcome the fear of what people think, because you're going to make a fool of yourself. Luckily, I've done so many foolish things in my life that I'm not afraid anymore when people think I'm a little bit afraid. But I mean, I've survived. Mixit was a big setback for me. I've done 4 TEDx talks. I don't know if you know that. 4 TEDx talks. The first 2 were so bad. The second one I did, my wife watched it. Afterwards, she said to me, "That is the worst speech she's ever seen anyone give in the world, like ever, on the internet, of anything she's ever seen. That was the worst, most embarrassing thing she's ever seen in her life." It's not nice to get that kind of feedback, but I survived it. And then I did another TEDx talk, because I had more stories, so people want to hear it. And my 3rd and 4th ones were better. But when you've made enough mistakes and made a fool of yourself enough, you eventually become thick-skinned enough to be able to tell your story. If you're not willing to put yourself out there, no one's going to be able to find you. As long as you're not being dishonest, people will give you another chance. So I've been very incompetent in many of my ventures, and I've learned a lot of lessons, but I've always tried to be honest. And that's why people keep giving me a chance. And then what I do is I try to put it out there, what I'm trying to achieve. People can't help you if they don't know where you are. So I've published a book, we raised quite a lot of money off the back of that book. People read it, then they want to get involved with what we're doing, attract the right kind of people. Got a LinkedIn profile, got a blog. People want to know who I am, they can find out.
Great. So tell us about the beginning, that first township network deployment, perhaps in Kaimandi, that's where it all started, just around the corner, and that very first R5 voucher sale. How did that moment prove to you? What did that mean to you?
Look, Kaimandi was our first, it means beautiful home in Khoza. It's the township outside Stellenbosch, about 10,000 homes, 50,000 people. No one to try to do what we're doing. It took us far longer than we thought it would take. It cost us much more money than we thought it would take. Electricity became a problem for us. Traditional fiber companies don't think about electricity. Local mafias, construction kind of protection rackets. We had to deal with those. We got the builders wrong. We got the model wrong. We got the project management wrong. We had some of the wrong people. Yes, it was great. When we sold our first voucher and when we made our homes live. But, in the beginning of a business, you're lying a lot. You're telling people what they want to hear. And people wanted to hear we were very successful and we were succeeding. So you tell them what they want to hear. But nobody wants to scratch too close to the surface. So the truth is, it was spuch and pluck, And it was working, but it was completely unscalable. And without scale, we didn't have a business.
True.
And it took us, I think we only really turned the corner about 2 years after we started.
Okay.
To the point where we started realizing, okay, now we've got a process here. Now it's not just me selling the dream, razzle dazzle, everything's going to be fine, don't panic, we're all going to die. It became genuine.
Yeah.
Definitely a year ago, things became super genuine around our ability to grow this profitably in other townships, not just in Kaimandi. So, and the whole thing's been fantastically exciting, very rewarding. People love our product. It's nice to walk around a community and people love what you're selling them. It's not a trick. You're not tricking them, not lying them about data, not lying to them about price. You don't have to worry about terms and conditions. It's a straight, legit, simple product. And you're helping people. The kids are going online. They're doing their studies online. Moms are able to telecommute rather than have to spend the day away from work, from their kids. People can start a business. There's 100 things that it's really positive. So I like being part of a business where I can proudly tell people what I do for a living,
Yeah. So you've chronicled the wins and losses in the book that you mentioned. What were maybe the biggest or the hardest lesson that you had to learn from what you mentioned earlier, Mix-It?
Mix-It was me at my absolute glorious, most incompetent self, unconscious incompetence. We try to take on big American companies head on, like WhatsApp, that is dumb. So strategically, we positioned ourselves wrong. We got our smartphone app wrong. We had to migrate to a smartphone user experience and messed that up completely. In retrospect, don't try to turn a feature phone app into a smartphone app. You've got to start again, and then when you've got a nice new experience, migrate all your customers across.
Sure. Yeah.
We got our business model wrong. It's in my book. You can read about it. We definitely had the wrong partner structure. At the end of the day, my partners and I weren't aligned. So that's, as soon as you and your shareholders are not completely aligned on things, you are not going to have a happy ending. It doesn't matter what you do. It's not going to end well. So that was wrong. And I just messed up a lot of things, But it's glad it happened. I'd made a bit of money up until that point in my life. And then I lost it all. I had to sell my house, move into a little cottage. We rented a cottage for 8 years. Drove a Honda Jazz, an old Honda Jazz for a while. And, had to rebuild. But I'd say up until that point, on top of being incompetent, I was quite arrogant. And I think arrogance comes from some insecurity. When you're actually when you're not self-confident, you actually become arrogant. You portray yourself as arrogant. And it was because I wasn't really sure I'd done it by myself. The money I'd made up until that time in my life, my dad was active in the industry. He was CEO of Vodacom, then he was the CEO of Cell C, so you've got a powerful father. You're not entirely sure whether you're making money because of you or because there's like a godfather figure out there. And then I got knocked to zero, and my old man had a stroke the same year, so he was knocked out of the game as well. So he hasn't been in the game for 12 years. Sure. And then I had to rebuild, and from scratch. And I was tempted to go back to, when I say go back, I never was in corporate, but to go into corporate and take the safe path and take a salary and rebuild. Luckily, no one was exactly leaping to my rescue, so I wasn't tempted into that. And then I managed to get myself back off the ground, by myself, and I managed to do it again. And I think almost, it doesn't matter who your dad or your mom is or anything, The first time you make money, you're always going to have a bit of imposter syndrome. You're going to think you got a little bit lucky. And that's when you want to buy a Ferrari and show everybody how great you are. If you can do it twice, you don't feel like an imposter anymore. You know you could do it. It wasn't luck the first time. There was a lot of luck, but it wasn't like just because you had a dad or whatever it is. And that's what I did. I managed to get through all of that. I'm pretty cocky now, but I like to think that I'm not insecure. I'm self-confident. I try to keep grounded, but it does feel to me that if things don't go well, I can do it again. And if I really need to, I can do it again. And I learned a lot of lessons along the way that you can only learn through failure, one of which is who's your real mates, you know.
Sure. Okay.
But I wouldn't recommend failing to anyone. I don't like the Silicon Valley mantra of like go and fail. It's like highly overrated failing. Rather learn from other people's mistakes and avoid losing money and getting hurt.
Yeah. I mean, what would be one of the lessons that you hung on to from some of the setbacks that you had when you jumped into Fibertime? What was the one thing you said, I'm not going to do that thing again?
Well, don't spend too much money.
Okay.
Don't get carried away on your overheads up front. Concentrate on one thing at a time. That's a big one. And under-promise. The best way to keep a promise is under-promise. So under-promise, over-deliver. There's a trap for salesy like people, which good entrepreneurs are always good at selling the dream and selling. But you can get caught in a trap of overselling. And then it's hard to keep people's trust because you can't keep your promise. Even though you delivered something great, you promised a little bit more.
Sure.
People feel like you didn't deliver what you offered. Then they don't trust you the next time you said it. So getting into the habit of, if you think you're going to do 70,000 homes this year, tell people you're going to do 50,000 homes. Just overshoot every time. Get into the habit of doing things like that. I mean, there's like 100 lessons, but I wrote a book about it. It's called Life Lessons. Yeah. We're actually publishing a new one now. It's going to be called Chasing the Internet.
Okay.
And there's lots of little things, and I'm still learning lessons. I mean, just in the last 12 months, in the last 3 months, I've learned lessons in business that I wish I didn't have to have made those expensive mistakes. But the one thing I can say, though, is, geez, man, just be honest. Just be straight. When you're tempted to go out into the dark or the devious road, or just stay in the light. Don't do anything that you wouldn't do in front of your children. And don't say anything that you wouldn't say in front of your children. Just stay in the light, be straight. If you do that in business, you're like ahead of 90% of the pack.
Sure. I mean, you mentioned earlier one of the things that caused some challenges in some of the previous business ventures was those alignment or disalignment of partners. How did you find the right partners here at Fibertime?
Well, that's quite a philosophical question, actually. The only way you're going to know if you're with the right people is if you know who you are. I mean, you can't be sure you hooked up with the right girl or the right guy or the right business partner or whatever, unless you know who you are. And how do you find out who you are? You fail. That's actually how you find out. You take risks. I always say people just take risks. If it's within your value set, let's just say you're a Christian and your value set's there, the 10 Commandments. If something crosses your path and it fits within your value set, take it every single time. Never hesitate. Take the opportunity. If it's, for instance, try heroin or something hectic, or if it is in your value set, try it. It's not in my value set, so I won't do it. But if it's like start a business or do a course, study something new, or travel to some exotic place, or go camping, make yourself uncomfortable, whatever, you should take it, because every time you take a little risk, you're learning about yourself. And the more you learn about yourself, the more likely you are to find out who you should be with. That's the first step. The second thing is be yourself all the time.
Yeah, that's great.
Now, how can you be yourself if you don't know who you are, right? But most of the time, you should just be authentic. Now, the thing about sales, particularly when you're raising capital, is sometimes you can read the audience. You can say, oh, this is a capitalist, or this is a narcissist, or whatever, and you know what they want to hear. And you know if you give them what they want to hear, they're going to give you money.
Yeah.
And that's a very dangerous thing, because then you're going to end up in bed with someone who's not in bed with you because of who you are, because of who they think you are. So you have to be authentic the whole time. Try and find out who you are as quickly as you can by taking lots of risks, and then just try and remember, if you end up in bed with people that are not like you, it's not going to go well. So you must always be 100% authentic, even at the risk of failing in your capital raise or finding a customer or whatever it is.
Do you think some of your previous ventures would have been different if you were more authentic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. But then I wouldn't have had those ventures. So
that's a good point.
The truth is, for instance, Fibertime, I was persona non grata in a lot of circles, capital circles. So when you like when you're knocking on doors and no one's opening the door, never mind listening to your pitch. Well, you take what you get. So sometimes you're in a situation where you're just desperate and you've got to take what you get, you know. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're the last person in the pub, there's only a couple of girls at the bar, it's not going to go well for you on the paper. And you've got to do what you've got to do. But if you're in a situation where you can if you've got a bit of time and you're not desperate, then you should be very fussy about that stuff. Which kind of brings back to like a main thing about business life as an entrepreneur is keep your life simple. Because the more expenses you've got in your life, the more properties and houses and the more, for instance, an expensive wife, expensive husband, if you've got burn rate in your life that's putting financial pressure on you, you're going to be more pressured to make a quick decision than if you have a bit of time to think.
True.
And the more pressured you are, the more likely you are to choose the wrong partner, and it's not going to go well.
Yeah, because I think that the first time a partner says yes, there's access to capital, and then you can get going. Yeah, good
I
point.
almost did a deal with the Guptas
Okay.
back in 2013. I'd got a big contract from the city of Tshwane. We were going to do public Wi-Fi in the townships, and quite a big contract. It was like 50 million rand or something. But they only pay you when you're finished. And they only pay you half of it when you're finished, and you pay the rest over 3 years, blah, blah, blah. And I needed to build this network, and it was cost 20 million rand. I didn't have 20 million rand, and nobody wanted to give me 20 million rand, you know. And I went to my old man and I said, Dad, I don't know what to do. I need 20 million rand. I'm sure I'll get paid. When we're like, right, the municipality is going to pay you. I mean, I was so desperate. I'm sure I'll get paid. What do you think I'll do? He said, no, you should speak to the Guptas. Are you mad? I'm pretty sure the Guptas aren't good people. This is 2013, before we knew what happened. But even then, there was a bit of a stink. No, he said, they've got lots of money, but they don't have any friends. So I got the number for Atul Gupta. I made a date to go and see him. And I was going to go see him. And I'm pretty sure if I'd met him and he'd said, okay, I'll give you 20 million rand, I would have taken it. And then that would have been the end of me. I would have been floating around on that organogram that floats around with the Gupta state capture thing, you know. But the day I landed in Joburg to go to that meeting, my stepmother phoned to say my dad had just had a stroke. And so I went to my dad and spent a few days in hospital with him instead of meeting Atul Gupta. But I took that as a sign from the universe, don't meet those guys. You know?
Okay. Wow, interesting how our journeys, like, sometimes take us to the place that we have to be, and other times it sort of steers us away.
The universe has a plan for all of us. I really genuinely believe that. Well, you don't have to follow that plan, but there's a plan. And you're getting signals all the time about which, are you on the wrong track or on the right track? And whether you pay attention is completely up to you.
True.
But one way to know whether you're on the right track is if you've got miracles in your life. I think to myself regularly, all the miracles, all the blessings, all the lucky breaks I've had. And the more you think of that, the more you can actually count in your head, oh, geez, that was a miracle. Wow, that was like hard. The more likely you are that you're living the life you're supposed to be living.
Yeah.
It's almost a predictable miracle. Miracles are predictable when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing with your life, because the universe is conspiring to make it easy for you.
Well, speaking about the things that are maybe easy for you, if you think over all your ventures, including where you are now, maybe the things that went really well or didn't go well, even through the good and the bad, what was something that ended up being easier than you expected it to be?
BEE3.
Okay.
I launched a project about 4 months ago. A friend of mine came to me and said, Al, I got this idea for BE. I'm like, yeah, okay, Chris, tell me it's idea. Whatever. You know? He said, no, we got all this compliance, and you're going to like get equity, and you do this ESG, and you're going to do this thing. And I mean, I don't even understand how these scorecards work. When we pay lawyers and ratings agencies, and nobody understands what's going on, you know. But you need it if you want to get a license, or if you want to work with the government, or work with a big telco, or whatever. So he says, no, forget about all of that. Give companies an alternative. Not mandatory. Don't delete the existing system. Just give people an alternative. So if you don't want to go through all the compliance headache, pay a 3% revenue tax. Okay, just if you make 100 million rand a year, 3% times 100 million, 3 million rand, pay to SARS. SARS issues you a certificate saying you're compliant. That's it. It's expensive. It is expensive. But you're compliant.
But there's
no
no
administrative. There's no headache. There's no friction. Nothing. That's not a bad idea. I actually quite like that idea. And I bounced it off a couple of the guys I know here in Stellenbosch who I have an enormous amount of respect for. And you know, these Afrikaans successful businessmen, the billionaires, you know, they're not always the most complimentary people in the world. So when you take them an idea, they're quite quick to say, this is a cock idea.
Like honesty, brutal honesty.
Yeah, and they're not afraid to give you feedback. But I took it to one of my mentors, and he said, this is a brilliant idea. So I said, okay. Then I got hold of a guy called Kanki Matekane, who's the CEO of the Black Business Council. I just tracked him down on LinkedIn. Hey, can I meet you? He said, sure. So I go meet him in Joburg. I tell him this idea. He says, it's a good idea. He'll introduce me to the minister. I meet the minister a week later, and his DG. They're like, this is a good idea. A week later, we have a workshop with the IDC, COSATU, the National Empowerment Fund.
Wow.
fucking unbelievable, bro. My brother,
think
we
just
like
falling
talking
into
about
place.
traction. Just
Yeah.
and now it's been, mooted as a legislative change for the transformation fund. So it's like, probably of all the things I've done, and I've done a lot of different things, the one that unbelievably the stars aligned for something ordinarily which is impossible to move the needle on is this 3% for level 3 scorecard. So, and I just take that as something I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah.
So I give it a go, and I'm learning stuff, and I'm putting myself out there, and some people are criticizing it, both private and public sector. At least I'm trying to do something.
Yep.
I'm not just sitting on the sidelines moaning. I'm trying to help the government achieve what it's trying to achieve, which is transformation, but in a way that's friendly for the private sector.
Yeah. So on the flip side of things maybe being easier than you expected it to be, what was one thing that was maybe more difficult than you thought? Maybe you thought on paper, this is an easy part of this journey. And then was it maybe the installations here within Fibertime that took longer than expected? You said it cost more money than you thought it would.
Nah, I mean, Fibertime, we knew how hard this was going to be. Okay. I mean, maybe if other people had known, they wouldn't have backed us. But we knew, we knew that these townships are not run by the police or the municipality. We knew we would have to somehow protect our infrastructure and use local labor and find contractors that are going to go into people's homes and not steal their cell phones. And I mean, there were like 100 things we knew nobody had ever tried before. It was going to be very, very hard. Didn't make it easier knowing about it. But to be honest, I mean, you have to ask any of the young guys and girls that work here, they just love the purpose. They love it. They get out of bed in the morning because we know we're making a difference. And the urgency is not because we're trying to make more money, it's because every day that goes by, that kids in South Africa don't have unlimited internet, affordable internet. There's a day that some kid can't study maths online or can't find a role model that's not a gangster, or can't find love, or can't do YouTube instead of Tik, or can't start a business, whatever. There's every day, tens of millions of South Africans right now are locked out of opportunity. They are literally unconnected.
Yeah.
And that's urgent. That creates urgency for us. So we go, okay, this is hard, but shit, Oaks, a lot of Oaks depend on us. Depending on us, we need to do this. We need to get this going. So it's lekker. And I've told the Oaks 100 times. If it's hard for us, it's hard for everyone else. So we must lean into these hard things because it's hard for people to copy us.
Yeah. If you're comfortable to share, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs who follow our podcast. If you think back on the decision to start Fibertime, obviously it can either be run as something that you do in your personal capacity. It could be done in the form of a legal vehicle like a PTY Limited. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. How did you consider doing it, knowing about your history of other business adventures that were maybe more tricky to navigate when the partnerships weren't aligned? How did you do it to make sure that as an entrepreneur you can capitalize on if this thing goes really well, how to protect yourself from uncertainty, how to protect your family? What did you do from a structural
This
perspective?
is my opinion. I mean, I might be wrong. You should have a family trust.
Okay.
It costs you a bit of money to set it up and it's a hack and all that, but you should have a family trust. That trust should own 100% of the shares in a company.
Okay.
That's your company. That company should then own 100% shares of the shares in another company, which is the startup, say Fibertime. Okay. That's Fibertime. Then you need a little company between you and your trust. You just have to have it for tax reasons down the road, or if you want to bring in outside investors. Then you're going to raise money into Fibertime. You don't raise money in Fibertime from 100 different people, and then you've got Fibertime having 100 different shareholders. You create another company called Investco, all PTY Limited, Investco. Everyone can subscribe for shares in Investco, and Investco subscribes for shares in Fibertime. Now Fibertime's got 2 shareholders.
Yes.
My company, my personal company, and my investor company. And whoever's the biggest investor in Investco's is the director, then represents all of them. People don't like to see a noisy company. A noisy company is a cap table, a shareholder list that's lots of people.
Yes.
You just want to have like 2 or 3 on that thing. That's the most, in my opinion, that's the best advice you can give anyone.
Okay.
And then one day, when they want liquidity, the only way you get liquidity is if you have shares in the actual underlying company. You collapse all the structures, distribute the shares as in specie, list in the JSE, and then it's all liquid. But for the first 4, 5, maybe 10 years, you need to be able to move really, really fast with minimum administrative admin.
Yes.
And administrative overhead, I mean. And the only way to do that is keep your cap table as simple as possible. It doesn't mean you don't raise a lot of money from different people.
True.
It's just put them behind companies so you don't see it on your own cap table.
Fibertime is still in the early growth phase. From a structural perspective, we know now a little bit about the ownership structure of you as the entrepreneur and the founder. You, at some point, need to benefit financially from the blood, sweat, and tears, and the time and the headspace, and just a sacrifice. How did you discuss it with your partners around when would be the right time to start drawing a salary or get some of your expenses covered or to maybe start taking a dividend? How did that journey look like for you within Fibertime?
Okay, if you're a founder, you expect to just sweat a little bit, put some skin in the game, but take a salary from day one.
Okay.
Yeah, not a market-related salary, but take some cash out and cover your costs. In terms of general reward for equity investment, the best thing to pitch is a dividend. Don't say to the guy, you're going to flip these shares for one day for 1,000 Rand a share, you bought them R1. Just say you're going to get 50 cents per share a year dividend, whatever, figure it out. Go do your cash flow analysis. And when your cash flow analysis, your forecast doesn't show that, then you don't have a great business. And the only way that your investors are going to make money is from a flip. And a flip is a dangerous strategy for making money. It's a much safer strategy, having a dividend strategy, that also could potentially be a flip strategy. If you get certain types of shareholders, then the only way you'll ever make money, well, it's inevitable that you'll have to sell. So if you have a private equity or venture capital shareholder, you're always going to have to sell your business because they'll never be able to flip their little 30% stake without everybody else also flipping because nobody wants to buy a 30% stake. So that's dangerous.
So did you go a dividend yield strategy? So you sold to investors this...
We're going to print money.
We're going to print money.
That's it.
Okay.
And we'll start printing money when we don't when there's no more opportunity to reinvest our funds. In the case of Fibertime, we are 210,000 homes in townships. There are a total of 13 million homes in townships.
Okay.
It's going to take a long time before my free cash flow goes towards dividends rather than pumping money into infrastructure in townships. Not to say we won't try. In the perfect world, you can pay a dividend and capture the market. But most people understand the fact that if you're just grabbing market share, it's better that than paying a dividend.
True. If you think about the role of an entrepreneur, you are many things within this organization, wear multiple hats. How do you actually just manage that time that you have available and your attention to move the needle within Fibertime?
Well, firstly, I'm not a great entrepreneur. So, like some of the entrepreneurs I've met, like Mark Levy or Doug Smolin or LB, the guy who started USN. You meet some of these people, or hear of some of these people. They graft, Yes, they graft like animals. I mean, I did graft like an animal in the 2000s, but I don't do it anymore. Because I've got kids and a wife, and I want to have a great relationship with my wife, and I want to know my kids when they're young, I don't work as long as many entrepreneurs, so a lot of the stuff I say doesn't really apply. But that's why I'm generous with equity. So I give I don't have as much founder equity as most entrepreneurs because I share that founder equity with my partners who are putting in the yards and making the sacrifices. So my real thing is about finding partners who can do the stuff that I can't do, which is mostly detail oriented.
Okay.
My thing is sell the dream. My job, sell the dream.
Okay.
Their job,
make it happen.
Keep the promises.
Okay. So that actually leads me into the next question. If you think about the team structure, if you're saying that you are willing to share that equity because there's more people than to do the work, how did you structure the team maybe from the outset when you launched Fibertime versus how that team structure is developed in terms of the people making the bigger decisions, the people making this a reality and rolling it out even more?
I think of a scale of a business from 1 to 10. You get real startups like size 1, and then you get a medium-sized businesses 3 to 5, then you get these like scale up 6 to 7, and then you get these giant businesses from 8 to 10. And different people have to run these types of businesses. The tolerance for uncertainty is the difference. So the type of person that can take your business from 6 to 10 has such a low tolerance for uncertainty that they'll never be the person that helps you start a business. They need to know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yes.
At the same time, the person who gets you from 1 to 3 is so comfortable with chaos, they're not going to be healthy for a business that goes from 6 to 10 because the business from 6 to 10 is now, don't do anything outside of the operating manual.
Yeah.
So it's just different people. Those early risk takers get founder equity. You're generous with that stuff, and they make a lot of money. If they're clever, they never sell that stuff. If they need the money, they sell it. I mean, I'm sure some of the early people in Capitec sold some of their shares because they didn't like the way the business was going because it's becoming boring. And they think, it's never going to succeed. But it's like, you shouldn't have sold your shares. But definitely they couldn't have stayed in that business because they were not the right types of people to be executives in businesses that become like focused on one thing at a time. In our case, we've slowly migrated from the more entrepreneurial types to more process-driven types. And then when you have to hand out equity there, you always keep a little bit in reserve so you can be generous, but then you have to have standard share option schemes. And the gist is, for instance, Fibertime, if I give you shares worth 10 Rand today and we are the next Capitec, they'll be worth 3,000 Rand in 10 years. And then that means you're going to make a ton of money, if you just focus on what you're doing. And we do that with all our staff. Almost, I think every single employee we have has got some shares. We gave them away for free, effectively. We did share option schemes to give everybody a sense of ownership. I don't want anyone to feel that they didn't have some financial reward out of the success of Fibertime. Also want people to have that sense of ownership for having been too greedy.
Yeah.
There's enough to go around. And I'd like to know that I didn't look back and think, geez, we were a bit too stingy with that. We should have helped everyone. Even if it's just a token, just to help everyone. I'm very blessed that I don't have a scarcity mindset. I've got an abundance mindset. It's built in. So I always think there's going to be more than enough to go around. If you're born with a scarcity mindset, I think it's a bit harder to do that.
Yeah. Where do you think your abundance mindset came from?
Must have been my family, my parents. My parents weren't very wealthy when we grew up, but they didn't instill a fear of not having money in my brain. I don't have a fear of that. They obviously gave me a lot of love. They must have as well. I don't have a great memory. I don't really remember what they did, but I always felt like they loved me and they made me feel safe. And I think that's definitely a contributing factor. Maybe there's a genetic component as well. Maybe some people are born with an abundance mindset and some aren't. But I think my upbringing was also very lucky. Both my mom and my dad were very loving,
Oh. You mentioned a little bit earlier that there's currently 210,000 connected homes that's linked to Fibertime. What works surprisingly well in the township environment that you don't believe would have worked in something like Sandton?
I think if you knocked on every single door in Sandton and asked people, can I come and install a free router in your home? A lot of people would have said no. Who are you? Why are you coming here?
What's the catch?
Well, I wouldn't even say what's the catch. It would just be, what's it going to look like? I want to see a photo. I want to see how does this affect my view. It's going to be like a sense of entitlement, like, hey, who are you to come into my suburb and dig up my road or whatever, Township, people is grateful. We're bringing 5 Rand a day, 100 megs per second internet with a free install into your home. They're like, it is too good to be true. Surely this is too good to be true. It's not. And we're going to make money. We're not lying. We're going to make money. This is not a trick.
No.
We're going to make a profit. You just get it's almost like people are a bit disbelieving that, that sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? But there's no catch. We're telling you the truth.
Yeah.
And that's probably that's maybe, if you think about it, it's got to be the biggest difference between the mindset of someone living in a township versus somebody living in Bryanston.
What did you say is the core operational challenge of maintaining this sort of structural integrity of this high density fiber network? Because it's not wireless, you didn't take the easy way out. What would you say is your team's biggest headache with making sure that people that have paid to have access actually has access on a continuous basis and that it's stable and doing what it's supposed to do?
Trying to keep the routers on. Because
Interesting.
they're plugged into the electricity in the home.
Okay.
So if somebody goes and flicks off the plug point and the router doesn't work, and then somebody walks past the house, their voucher stops working. So that's an issue. We're trying to figure out how to put incentives in place. But so that when the simple incentive is if people are using it, they'll keep it on. So we're really trying to convince people it's really not a bad idea to use this rather than mobile airtime.
Yeah.
But bearing in mind that a lot of people living in townships in South Africa have been traumatized by mobile airtime. So it just sounds too good to be true. It can't be unlimited internet at 100 megs per second for 5. It can't be. It's never in their life ever. That has never happened. So just trying to communicate to the market, and then also if you've never really used the internet in a totally serendipitous way, you don't know how powerful the internet is in that way. You've never spent 24 hours surfing cat videos or cooking videos or whatever it is. But once people taste it and just realize, jeez, this is unbelievable. There's no catch. And look how much stuff I can do on the internet. And there's so much speed. There's no waiting. That hook, trying to get that hook, that change of behavior faster it's probably our biggest focus at the moment.
Wow. If you think about Fibertime as a whole, but we look beyond the financial growth, the things that the shareholders want to see, are there any social impact metrics that you keep a very close eye on that would have you look back at the end of a week or end of a month or end of a quarter going, this was the most incredible, successful week?
Somebody else asked me that the other day. We don't really have a proper quantitative metric. We've got lots of stories. And we try to sort of tell a different story every week, like an impact story, like someone's life, qualitative, what did it mean to them? We've got a great story. One of our first customers was Andiswa in Kayamandi. She was working in a call center. She was traveling to work, taxi in the morning, taxi in the evening, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, 80 hours a month in a taxi,
Yes.
900 Rand a month in taxi fare, call center job. We put Fibertime in her home. She could work from home. 80 hours, done. 80 hours in her back pocket. 900 Rand. Instead of taxi, she spent 110 Rand on Fibertime for 22 days. 790 Rand in her back pocket next to her 80 hours. She's there in the morning when her kids go to school, so she makes sure they go to school. She's there in the afternoon when the kids come home from school. She makes sure they do their homework. She makes sure the kids are inside, not on the streets. The kids are inside, they're on the internet, so they're not getting up to mischief with drugs and gangs and everything that's happening outside. She's studying an online company secretarial course now in the evenings with her spare time and with the money that she's saved, and she's all using the internet that we already put there. So that's like radical, exponential, social, generational impact.
Yes.
You know.
And
And to be honest, you don't have to measure that. I think everybody with half a brand is kind of realizing that that is like a big thing that you don't have to measure. You're just putting a pipe into somebody's home and connecting them to the world. And that's going to change their life. You know?
And that's not the only story that I imagine you've got.
We got so many. I mean, one of the ladies, she taught herself how to cook on YouTube. And she started a catering business. And she's put her son through matric or first year varsity or something like that. So, I mean, just think about that. Like, just think you could make money cooking, catering, but what's holding you back? You don't know how to cook food.
Yes.
Maybe because you're illiterate, or maybe because there's no cookbooks or something. But you can go on the internet, there's free content there. It's in English, it's in Afrikaans, it's whatever language you want to say. And you can learn how to cook. And from that, you can have a skill that you can market and make money, the profit from which you can use to put your kid through school. So radical. Without the internet, can't do that.
I think these are probably some metrics you need to keep a closer eye on, because this is the fuel that fires this business. And if we think about the future, we know a little bit more now about how Fibertime came to be, but we need to keep an eye on the future. And if you look back over the things that you were involved in, what are the things that would fuel that future vision that made you the most proud? Maybe one achievement that you thought that thing, I mean, nobody can take that away from me. How proud I am of that involvement, that engagement, that story.
I must say the Project Isizwe and the Tshwane Free Wi-Fi project was pretty cool. You know, working with the government was a privilege. We could really move the needle. It became the biggest municipal Wi-Fi network in the country. A lot of people in Mamelodi, Atteridgeville, Shoshongove, they take it for granted that they can walk from their home to a public free Wi-Fi zone, the municipality support. So that was a cool thing. I'll never do it again though.
Okay, why not?
Because it's pretty freaking scary waiting for the government to pay you. And when the government changes like it did from the ANC to the DA, then the new guys want to just diss everything that the old guys did. And you've got to go through a colonoscopy in terms of audits and things like that. And then you get caught in these political mud fights. But maybe most of all, we couldn't scale it. You know? So we had this hugely successful project in Pretoria, but there was no other municipality in the country that wanted to do it. And it was either that they didn't buy into the idea that the internet's a good thing, or they were corrupt, so they'd ask you for kickbacks, or they were just utterly incompetent. They just couldn't organize it. So, the fact that we couldn't do it more than once meant it was not the right path. It was a great thing to be part of, and I'm always grateful for that opportunity and the people I met in that whole process. But that's not the way to get everyone on the internet. The way to get everyone on the internet is to make a profit.
Yes. So where are you heading next? Where's Fibertime going? What is the roadmap for growth? You're at 210,000 families, homes only. There's another, 12.5 million to go. What are you planning? What are you ticking off? What is your team tackling this week, next month?
No, we're flat out. We're in 39 townships right now, 9 towns, cities, 6 provinces. We've got about 1 million homes in work in progress. So a year from now, I hope we'll have more than 1 million connected homes, please God. That's still a drop in the ocean. It's less than 20% market share or penetration of the market. Say 2 years from now, I'm hoping we'll be at 2 million homes. I don't like talking too much about the future, but you've got to kind of draw a little picture. I'd like to be much more than this, but maybe realistically we can be at 1.8 million homes. That's almost 10 million people. There's 5 people on average per home. That's 10 million people. That's that's a lot of people with unlimited access to the internet. My picture that I'd like to say, by 2030, I'd like to say that there's 30 million South Africans that have unfettered access to affordable internet. That's a picture that will radically change township life and change the country. Hopefully grow the economy a little bit, give people more opportunities.
So your goal that I've read is to get Fibertime listed on the JSE. What are the most critical things that you think need to happen and that you need to build into Fibertime today to make that a reality?
Simplify it.
Simplify. Interesting. Why?
The JSE is about telling stories. Everything's about telling stories. And the simpler the story, the more people understand what you're selling. So maybe our funding structure is a bit complicated. Maybe our value proposition is a bit complicated. Maybe our user experience is a bit complicated. Maybe our cap table is a bit complicated. Everything. You got to look at everything and ask yourself, not how do you make this more complicated? You ask yourself, how do I make it less complicated? So anybody can understand what we do and how it works and how it gets funded. So we do need to simplify a little bit. Also, I think a lot of companies and executives use complexity to hide dodginess. The lovely thing about our business model is very clear how we make money. It's just to sell a £5 voucher and we make enough profit to pay a dividend. And if we don't, then you can see through that whole thing. The customer can trust how we're doing this. We're not selling their information. There's no tricks here. There's no catch. There's no accounting trickery. So I think, I hope we get an opportunity to list. I mean, maybe we won't. We're aiming for it. It's a great goal to go for. And if we do, we're going to have to make sure we have the best story in town. And part of being the best story in town is having the most simple story.
Within your partnership structure, are they also aligned that they think listing this organization would move the needle?
Yeah.
Do you think it will accelerate the impact?
If we get more capital and we grow faster, sure.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, we've got to connect every home in the country and we need money for that. So we wouldn't list to cash in. We're listing to access more capital to grow faster.
Okay. At the current organizational structure, do you think that there's enough depth or enough hands or enough team that if you were to double the amount of capital that you can raise to make it work and to make it happen?
Flat out.
Okay. How have you learned to delegate that responsibility or to work in a team where you let go of some things that allow other people to do? I mean, you alluded to it earlier that you no longer have that arrogance that you may have had in the early days and you're more comfortable to say, I don't know, I need people around me. But how do you practically do that on a day-to-day?
Look, you should always be trying, it's such a trite thing to say, but you should be trying to hire people that are better than you. It's easy for me to hire people that are better than me. There are a lot of people that are better than me. So the way to find out whether you can trust people is to trust people.
Yeah.
Let's just say you hook up, look, you've got a nice head of hair, girl likes you, you hook up with her, but you're worried that she's going to cheat on you. So what you say is you're not allowed to go out ever without me. You're locked in your room if I'm not at home, All you're doing is delaying the truth. Because after 10 years, she suddenly escapes. The first thing she does when she escapes is cheat on you. You wasted 10 years of your life. You should let her cheat on you early. You should let people be incompetent early. You should let them be dishonest early, as quickly as possible. You should get through that quickly rather than try to protect yourself. Because the way to find out whether the people are the right people is to let them
be the right people.
Or the wrong people.
Yeah.
And not be afraid of having made the wrong decision. And then don't make that stupid mistake again. I'll go over and over and over. It's a lot of apples and apples. If you get good people in, they'll attract good people. So it's just about that getting going with the right 2 or 3 people. You get your critical mass and you don't look back. And then financial incentives.
Okay. So as you scale the business, I think you're almost at about 100 people now within the organization. That's excluding external contractors. That obviously
external contractors is about 4,500.
Wow. So it takes intention and effort to build a set of values that continue to attract the right people. What do you do actively within the organization to keep promoting this culture that's brought Fibertime from when you started it to where it is today?
Repetition.
Okay.
You just keep saying it over and over and over. We've obviously got a book. You can read it. There's a lot of stuff inside there. We've got an employee welcome pack. We read out our values and we walk our talk.
Yeah.
Starting with me, obviously. I mean, I can't say we are honest and then I'm not honest.
True.
It's not to say we're perfect about all these things, but culture's a big thing, massive thing, and the values in your culture are a big thing. But what I've learned, maybe what I didn't really fully appreciate before, is performance does create a culture. But if you're not performing, it's hard to create a culture. So Iburst, we had a great culture, amazing culture, one of the best cultures I've ever been in. And we definitely created that. It was very well curated, an excellent head of HR. Because, we weren't really delivering the goods. We weren't making money. We never really shot the lights out there. Whereas at Fibertime, we've been less effective at creating culture. But now that we're shooting the lights out, the culture's there. It's like it's almost like organic as opposed to contrived. Our culture is being made by the fact that we're winning, or feel like we're winning. And it's attracting the right kind of people. And the temperature, and because we've got a policy of sink or swim, we ratchet up the temperature, and the people that can't handle it, they leave. So we're getting rid of the wrong people, we're attracting the right people.
Yeah.
It's a good winning culture inside the company.
Absolutely. We're going to get to a quick fire round in a second, but just one final question. What role do you believe in your life and in your family's life do your sort of personal well-being and balance play?
Me personally, I try to exercise every day. I've never been really into gym. You're probably surprised to hear this, but I don't do a lot of gym. But I always found it a bit boring. But then I read all these books recently about how muscle density and bone density is important. So I tried a little bit of exercise regularly. And my wife, I'm very fortunate, I married a great lady. So she looks after my diet. She's obviously Afrikaans as well, which means I'm a red meat eater all the time.
Yeah. Rice, vlees en aardappels.
Yeah. I mean, stress is a big factor in anybody's life, so you've got to figure out what works for meditation. I read a lot. Reading is my form of meditation. And I love spending time with my children. It takes my mind off the less, voices in my head. Diet's a big thing. If you get your diet wrong, you're screwed. I mean, I drink quite a lot of wine. It's the secret to a happy marriage. But it doesn't really affect my health that much because I eat right.
Yeah.
And I think if you're not eating big portions and eating the right kind of food, that's a big part of overall health. But exercise, I'm realizing more and more, like especially doing weights, cardio obviously as well, but doing weights contributes a lot to your sense of well-being and confidence. So I'm trying to maintain a nice balanced lifestyle. But I also live in an environment which is a healthy environment. At Stellenbosch, I don't spend a lot of time in traffic. When I walk last year, I averaged about 10 Ks a day. I did walk 3,600 Ks last year. Just meetings, coffee meeting instead of sitting in my office. So those things all together kind of contribute to a more balanced kind of lifestyle.
Yeah. I want to sneak in a last question before the quick fire, just because you've spoken about your kids a lot. Do your kids know what this business is all about? Do they know what you're about? How do you involve them in the mission of Fibertime?
Yeah, look, I mean, when kids are young, they don't understand how the world works. My oldest thinks she understands what we're doing. In my new book, I'm publishing a new one called Chasing the Internet. And my oldest daughter, actually all three of my daughters, I gave them a competition to design the cover.
Okay.
But you can't design a cover of a book unless you understand what's in the book.
Yeah,
so
true.
That kind of helped me. You can't tell your kids what you do and expect them to understand it. You've got to tell them a story. So luckily I'm good at telling stories. They're great little kids. I love those little things. And but my business is my business and my family is my family. I try to keep it all private. I have taken my kids on a couple of tours in Kaimandi, for instance, and then they see a whole world they haven't seen before. But you don't have to be in the game of Fibertime in order to know that we live in a country of inequality. You have not a lot of people living a different life to a whole lot of people, and it's not sustainable. Yeah. We all have to do something as much as we can to try and deal with making the country a little bit less unfair.
Yeah. So, you mentioned when we started that you studied your CA, but that wasn't really the thing that you were super passionate about, because at least it meant you studied for free. Just remind us again, your first ever job?
Real job is Deloitte.
Real job at Deloitte, okay. What's the first thing you do every morning when you wake up?
Duolingo, I learn Zulu.
Okay. If it wasn't for Fibertime, what would your next big audacious mission be?
Connect everyone to the internet.
What's the single best piece of advice that you'd give to an aspiring entrepreneur who's currently facing a major failure?
Dennis O'Brien, just after Mixed I met him. He's a wealthy Irish billionaire. I told him my whole sob story. He looked at me and says, business is rough and tumble. If you can't handle it, don't go into business. Best advice I ever got. Just man up. It's going to be tough. You're going to go through little rough patches, but it's like a playground. It's like water polo. There's a ref, but they can't see everything that's happening. So stop crying about it. Stuff's going to happen. It's unfair. Get on with it. Yeah.
Straight shooting honesty. Which entrepreneur do you admire most and why?
I like Michiel Leroux. He was the founder of Capitec, one of the founders. And I like him, built a great business that helps a lot of people, made a lot of money. Still married to the same person. He's got nice kids, lives in the same house. I like that. That's quite aspirational.
Yeah, love that. Which app on your phone can't you go without?
WhatsApp, undoubtedly.
Do you do business on there?
Everything. make love, make money.
Everything just available at your fingertips. Who do you call when you've got a major strategic crisis?
I used to phone my dad. Sadly, he's had a stroke, so I can't talk too much anymore. Strategic crisis, sometimes I speak to my wife. My wife's very, very smart. She's got a good gut instinct for a lot of things. It irritates me sometimes because she's right, and it irritates me. But yeah, she's definitely, when it comes to decisions about people, she's always spot on. And I've got a great business partner, a guy called Will Marshall Smith. He helps me a lot. We're very close. And I've got 1 or 2 mentors. Very lucky to have had some mentors along the way. But it's very hard to get proper advice from people who don't understand the nuts and bolts of your business. So you can't just phone a random person and say, I'm in this situation, what should I do? You need to have close partners in your business.
Okay, breakneck. Good one to watch out for. Alan, thank you so much for sharing your story with so much intention and honesty. And from Township Fiber to Global Ambition, it's clear that Fibertime isn't just a business, but it's a mission. So thank you for being part of Built with Intent. We'll be watching and cheering from the sidelines as you grow from 210,000 connected homes to millions of homes. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.